On April the 11th, Russian and later Ukrainian Telegram channels circulated a video of the brutal execution of a Ukrainian prisoner of war who was alive at the time of the beheading. The Russian military is also displaying a bulletproof vest on camera, which is likely to belong to their victim. President of Ukraine Volodymyr Zelensky reacted to the brutal executions of the Ukrainian military. He urged the world to ensure the defeat of terror.
There is something that no one in the world can ignore: how easily these Russian beasts kill. This is not an accident, this is not an episode. It happened before. It happened thousands of times in Bucha. Everyone must react. We are not going to forget anything and forgive the killers. Legal responsibility will be for everything.
The main intelligence directorate of the Ukrainian Defense Ministry said that the publication of such cruel videos was intended to intimidate both Ukrainians and the Russian military themselves so that they did not plan to surrender.
We have not yet seen a single confirmation that a Russian POW was being tortured, especially subjected to some kind of public execution. Perhaps they're trying to intimidate our Ukrainian military so that it does not continue the fight. But such videos have the opposite effect. On the contrary, seeing what the Russians are doing with our military, our soldiers will want to quickly drive these monsters out of Ukrainian territory.
Ukrainian Minister of Foreign Affairs Dmytro Kuleba called for Russia to be excluded from the UN.
It is absurd that Russia, which is worse than ISIS, is presiding over the United Nations Security Council. Russian terrorists must be kicked out of Ukraine and the UN and be held accountable for their crimes. Dmytro Kuleba, Minister of Foreign Affairs of Ukraine, on Twitter.
This is a direct proof that Russia is the same terrorist organization, the same terrorist country as Islamic State of Iraq and the Levant, as other terrorist organizations that exist in the world, and the international community should finally see this.
The Russian authorities ignored the video of the execution. Only on April the 12th, in the afternoon, Kremlin spokesperson Dmitry Peskov told the media that the authenticity of the video still needed to be verified.
Of course, this footage is terrible, and we have to check its authenticity. And then we could have a reason to check whether this is true or not, whether it was really done, and if it was, then where and by whom. But first of all, in the world of fakes in which we live, we need to verify the authenticity of these frames. Dmitry Peskov, press secretary of the President of the Russian Federation, news agency RIA Novosti on Telegram.
During the full-scale war against Ukraine, Russia's violations of the Geneva Conventions was repeatedly recorded, including the ill treatment of Ukrainian prisoners of war. But Russia did not conduct a single public investigation and punishment of its militants for such crimes.
One gets the impression that the Russian authorities, the Russian military command, allow this because they do not react to such actions in any way. They didn't conduct any investigations. They didn't say that they were going to look for those responsible.
The Security Service of Ukraine announced that it had begun investigating the crime recorded on video. Criminal proceedings were opened on the fact of violation of the laws and customs of war. The identity of the brutally executed Ukrainian soldier is still being established. Russia's full-scale military aggression against Ukraine has radically changed the qualitative and quantitative composition of the armed forces of Ukraine. According to Defense Minister Oleksiy Reznikov, there are about 700,000 personnel in the armed forces today, and at the end of 2021, there were only 250,000 military personnel. Some of those who fought on the battlefield have been trained abroad on the best Western equipment, which partners have been supplying to Ukraine since March last year.
Firepower has grown in terms of quality indicators because in terms of the quantity, we need more gun barrels, more artillery systems. But at the same time, shooting accuracy has increased and shell consumption has decreased, despite the fact that some systems are allocated for counter-battery combat, and at the same time, the expenses of the Russian artillery are growing. So we can say that we have grown not so much firepower as the quality of its disposal.
At the beginning of the Russian full-scale war against Ukraine, the most modern types of cannon artillery in service of the armed forces of Ukraine were Soviet howitzers manufactured in the 1980s. In April 2022, the Ukrainian army received American 154mm howitzers howitzers. The cannon is 2 times lighter than its Soviet counterparts. The range of shells has expanded and increased. Their accuracy is several times higher than those used by the Russian army.
If in 2014 the cases when our artilleryman could hit a moving target, a moving tank, for example, which was moving on the battlefield, could be counted on the fingers, now it happens almost every day. This is how accurate these howitzers are. There is M982 Excalibur ammunition, that is, I don't know, the pinnacle of technological excellence. In fact, it's a rocket that is fired from the barrel of an ordinary howitzer. It flies at a distance of 40 kilometers or even more, in some cases up to 60 kilometers, and then it hits the target with an accuracy of 1 meter.
The Ukrainian army, without exaggeration, has surprised the world not only with courage but also with military steadfastness. The armed forces of Ukraine make the most of the capabilities of Western technology.
If you remember such a story that turned the world of military art upside down about how the armed forces of Ukraine used the M142 HIMARS. Actually, in the American army, the M142 HIMARS is a sort of a scene of surgically destroy a small pillbox of the enemy in the conditions of urban development or combined arms combat. But here it turns out that the armed forces of Ukraine have found a format for how to use them. And HIMARS, as an operational tactical complex with a firing range of several tens of kilometers on enemy positions, has turned into an interesting tool to power several tens of kilograms of explosives on Russian troops where they are most vulnerable.
Western models of wheeled and tracked vehicles, anti-tank missile systems, grenade launchers, air and missile defense systems, self-propelled artillery, drones. The help of partners has turned the armed forces of Ukraine into a modern NATO standard army with colossal combat experience. Therefore, the renewed Ukrainian army will become the basis for protecting the eastern borders of entire Europe after the victory over Russia, experts are sure.
Everything that the Russians see around them needs to be occupied. This is all primordially Russian land. Be it Japan, be it China, everything must be occupied by them. Therefore, it is obvious that after we reach the state borders, we will hold the defense. And after the end of the war, the Ukrainian army will be the army with the greatest combat experience in Europe. No one, there is not a single country that would lead such a big war and has such combat experience.
The Ukrainian armed forces will have about 500,000 personnel after the end of the war, experts say. Also, funding for the army and the military-industrial complex will increase significantly. After such transformations, Ukraine's accession to NATO will become only a matter of time and political will.
The first Black Sea Security Conference has been started today under the aegis of the International Crimea Platform in Bucharest. The Minister of International Affairs and Defense of both countries are co-organizers of this event in partnership with the Center of Defense Strategies of Ukraine. The Black Sea region was not in focus of Europe's defense policy before the first and the second full-scale invasions of Russia into Ukraine, but the situation has changed dramatically after unprecedented Russian aggression against Ukraine and global Europe. Last year, NATO adopted the new strategic concepts. According to this document, Russia is claimed the main threat to the Europe-Atlantic security, and NATO increased its activity in this region significantly. Bulgaria, Romania, Turkey are the eastern and southern flank of NATO, which should be strengthened due to the increasingly growing Russia aggression. Ukraine plays a pivotal role in this context. The experts which participate in this event stressed that in the past each and every country of this region was trying to deal with the regional security issues on its own, but now they realize that just common efforts could ensure the security in the region and stop Russia. Peace is the main precondition for the dynamic economic growth in the Black Sea region and food security in the world. The Minister of Foreign Affairs of Ukraine, Dmytro Kuleba, has his own recipe for the region. The Black Sea should become an internal sea of NATO organization, the same as Baltic Sea after Finland's accession to NATO.
Nobody repressed anyone on the territory of the Crimean Peninsula for using the Russian language. We now have a law on the functioning of the state language as Ukrainian. That is what we have in the state. And of course, this law would start working on the territory of the peninsula after its deoccupation. But at the same time, we understand that there must be a certain transitional period for our people to relearn and speak the Ukrainian language again. It's not all that simple. Therefore, we will open educational institutions where people will be able to additionally study the Ukrainian language. But of course, no one will persecute our citizens for speaking Russian. We are talking primarily about functioning in state authorities on the territory of Crimea, on municipal institutions, educational institutions, and so on. As for eviction of Russians and so on, this will affect only Russian citizens. That is, not our Ukrainian citizens who forcibly received a Russian passport after 2014, but these Russians who migrated in large numbers from the territory of the Russian Federation after 2014. We have the only position regarding these people. Those who came to Crimea illegally after 2014, according to various estimates, are from 500,000 people to 800,000 people. Our citizens who at the time of 2014 lived in Crimea, even if they received an illegal occupational passport, we will not prosecute for the mere fact of their residence in the territory of Crimea and obtaining an occupational passport, because according to Ukrainian law, this is not a crime. All documents issued on the territory of Crimea are worth nothing.